Devil, my friend. Fashion. Things to wear. Possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rockin' Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh, yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies, we got some shirts, we got some tanks coming up, we got some booty shorts, we got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rockin' Horror.
Horns up, fangs out. Devil, my friend, it has been an amazingly awesome second season. Fangs Infernos, RIPs, it's all because of you guys. But in our traditional form, we have to discuss this year. And Fangs and Infernos, that was all thanks to you guys. As always, you know that me and Devil put together our list of our top 25, our top picks, our top 5 picks each of the year, this being 2025, and it's voted on by you guys. Yes, I know. A lot of you guys have been talking to me about Sinners. Devil and I are on top of that. We have some ideas floating around on exactly how we want to bring Sinners to you guys. It's going to happen. It may be a traditional showdown. It may be a specialty episode discussion. And it might even be an exclusive involving something that Devil and I are kicking around as something that we think could be beneficial for the success of the show. But no matter what, their Fangs and Infernos, yes, we are going to talk about Sinners for you guys. It was not personal. Like Devil and I have always said, we are not a Hollywood-based show. We like to keep it very fresh, you know, at times under the grid and fun and flirty. So it's important to us to have that collection of Hollywood, mid-level traditional horror movies and mixed with like independent B-rate movies. So stop taking it so fucking personally because it's our show, but we still love you guys for it. Devil, my friend, end of 2025. It was a fun one for horror this year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you know, like you were talking about the Sinners, like, and like people were going, "Oh my God, you can't talking about that." It's like, you know what I mean? That movie sucked. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I mean, it's kind of like just one of those ones where you know, you know, we can only pick 5 each, and if we each pick 5 movies that are big, huge movies that we know everybody's gonna pick, then the little guys aren't gonna be able to talk about it, which kind of sucks, you know. Especially, you know, like I said, you know, we had a couple on that list that were fun, you know, like sort of the, you know, you had the Peter Pan Nightmares one, which is, you know, that more of that B-rated, you know, in that realm of like the Bambi and the Disney, you know, horror films that are starting to come around, that Poohverse or whatever you want to call it. You
Yeah,
know,
like
one of
the public domain stuff.
yeah, public domain horror films. And then you had like one that, you know, a lot of people that may not have known, but like one of the best movies that were on that list that barely got any love. I'm just gonna give a little quick shout out about it. Is that
Absolutely.
Ugly Stepsister. I mean, that movie is
Dude.
freaking amazing. I thought it was really cool. It's a really cool like adaptation of like, you know, Cinderella and from the other side of the story, from the Ugly Stepsister, and mixed in with the evil and the horror, and it was really, really cool. But you, like I said, you know, you put in these movies, and you know certain movies are gonna get, you're gonna get the love, which, you know, like I said, you know, when our top 5 winners, you know, you had Nosferatu, you knew Nosferatu is gonna get a big huge plug.
It was this year's Terrifier 3.
You know what I mean? So you know that one's gonna be in it. You know, the Black Phone, you know, Black Phone 2 being out, you know, being such a successful as the first Black Phone. Kind of like last year with Smile, we did Smile too. So it was like one of those ones where it was just like, yeah, you're just gonna talk about these ones. But like I said, we like to throw in those little extra horror films in there, like, like you said, the Peter Pan movie. We threw in, Stephen King's The Long Walk on there for a little bit. We threw, the Death of a Unicorn, which I thought was just an interesting, weird, and fun movie. You know what I mean? And I kind of figured that one would have gotten a little bit more. I wasn't expecting that one to win, but I figured a little bit more love because of the Fangs and Infernos for one. Paul Rudd and Jenna
Yeah.
Ortega are in that film, so I was like, you would think like the Wednesday 13, Beetlejuice, Tim Burton people might have just been like, hell yeah, let's just go see that movie. But, I mean,
Oh,
was it a great movie? Yeah, it was fun. It was entertaining. So, I mean, that's the cool thing about this year. There's a lot of good, I mean, there's other ones that are on there. I just recently seen the trailer for the new 28 days, 28 years later. They're showing the previews now for the second part. We went and seen
okay.
that, and we went and seen that first one, and I thought that was good. You know what I mean? I liked it. I thought it was fun. We could have put it out on our list. There's a bunch of good horror films that were on The Conjuring had a new one this year. Obviously, so it's like. There's only so much that you can put out, and like I said, we like to spread it around as far as like you said, Hollywood top tier films, maybe those mid kind of grades and stuff like that, and then you're like, your lower B grade ones and stuff like that. So, but it's cool, I mean, maybe if we would have thrown in the Sinners and thrown in those big ones, we wouldn't have the option to talk about, some of the ones that we're going to talk about, like the Toxic Avenger. I
There
mean,
was no way
that
that I
might not have
wasn't.
yeah, that might have not have been able to make that list, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or even like, some of the other ones that we're gonna discuss. So it's cool,
Yeah.
but it's fun that, I mean it's 2025 had its good run for some good horror films this year. Some were good, some were bad, and some somewhere in that middle, but you know what I mean. And that's the good thing about about the horror genre and the horror fans and stuff like that. Even when we discuss some of these ones, you know what I mean, like a lot of these movies, Nosferatu, which is kind of surprising, Nosferatu getting as much love for
Yeah.
one us to talk about, but yet so many people bitching and complaining about that movie as much too. So you would think that that movie wouldn't
Mrs.
have gotten
Vamp
as much
included.
love. So yeah, you would think that that movie would have gotten. I mean, I kind of had my instincts saying that Nosferatu was definitely going to be one of the top five before we started the voting. But then again, like I said, just from going out and talking to fans and talking to, film directors and, writers and other people at cons and stuff like that, it's, Nosferatu has like a love hate. So, yeah, it was surprising to see that one. But yeah, we're just, it's been a good year, and we're gonna dissect and let everybody know what we felt about the five that won. And like I said, some are gonna be nice and some are gonna be naughty. But that's 2025 for you.
Absolutely, for sure. No, exactly, Devil. Because the fact of the matter is, like, for me personally, only speaking of myself, there's no way on God's green earth that I wasn't putting the Toxic Avenger on my top five for voting. Like, we're both trauma people. I love Toxic Avenger. Kudos and a quick shout out to next year's New Jersey Horror Con for coming on strong, baby, with, the actor that played Melvin, the actor, like the stunt man, for lack of a better term, that was the Toxic Avenger, and I forget the character's name, but also the brunette, bully from the original Toxic Avenger. So I am very, very stoked for New Jersey Horror Con coming through to give me a lot of opportunity to toughen out my Toxic Avenger poster with more signatures outside of just Uncle Lloyd. So super duper stoked about that. But anyway, I have a nostalgia when it comes to trauma and especially the Toxic Avenger. Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High. That's my trauma world. So like I there's no way, as long as I watched that movie and felt solidly good about it, there's no way I wasn't going to put it on my top five just for out to discussion. And also as like a very like closing cap when it came to the whole Sinners discussion, the other thing too was Devil and I had made the conscious decision because while we are very aware that Nosferatu was a 2024 movie, it came out so late in the year that we had already made our list, submitted it to you guys, and you guys had also already voted by the time that that came out. So we've also since made the decision that if there's a late year movie that comes out um after we've done our end of year that we felt is worthy of your votes, we're going to include it automatically. That's just a decision that Devil and I have made.
You know, in determinations of 2025, there's a possibility that in 2026 we're gonna have to put the Return of the Living Dead because that's supposed to come out this year here soon,
Yes.
shortly. So, depending on how well that movie does, that may be on our 2026 one. Even though,
Mhm.
like you said, it's just the any movie that comes out towards that end of the late, you know, November, you know, mid to late November or December. Obviously, we don't have enough time to watch it and
To go
record it.
back.
Yeah, and try to get it out before, right before, you know, where this when this episode comes out. So yeah, for
Yeah, how
sure,
about
you know.
put it on the poll and it only gets 2 votes because we closed the poll 4 days later. Like just doesn't make any sense. But then and also it's one of those things as well where for you guys as well, you know, it's funny coming from me, but we also don't want to oversaturate the voting since there's only 10 spots for something that falls into the same category. And in this case, vampire movies. Look, you guys know me. I'll talk vampire movies all day and all night. But when it comes to voting and giving those slots and that love to other movies, just like Devil said with Death of a Unicorn and The Ugly Stepsister. So taking up 2 slots for Hollywood vampire movies, it doesn't benefit anybody. So again, it's not personal, but that being said, we did hear you. We do watch, we do pay attention. We've got you guys covered. We're just seeing where we want to put it, how we want to do it, especially with a new situation that we're looking forward to announcing at the beginning of next year, just for you guys. So keep that in mind and watch our socials. And trust me, again, we got you. So anyway, Devil, best of 2025. We've got Nosferatu. We've got the Toxic Avenger. We've got Frankenstein. Dude, that one's going to be fun. We've got Heart Eyes, and we've got Black Phone Part 2 as voted on by the Fangs and Infernos. And starting off with Nosferatu, as it was our end of 2024 movie, this is a very, very interesting one because the fact of the matter is it's it's earned the discussion both positively and negatively. It's also warranted of a cool little follow-up opportunity, being that after revisiting, certain certain opinions have changed a little bit. Some of mine I'm still working on, but I definitely match you in something that you addressed with me in a previous conversation recently. So I definitely understand that with you. But starting off with my opinion at the time of watching it, I still loved the movie right off the bat overall. And for the record, I still like it quite a bit. My favorite Hollywood film vampire has always been Nosferatu, and it hasn't changed even after revisiting this movie last week. Um, I'm first and foremost 2 things. I am a Bill Skarsgård fan. I think he's a fantastic character actor. I liked him in the Crow movie. Like I'm not going to get into it heavily. We did an entire episode based off of that. That movie was dead where it stood regardless just because of the stupid mistake they made of using the names Eric and Shelley. That was the kiss of death no matter what, regardless of whether that movie was awesome or terrible. That movie was doomed just on that decision. However, as far as Bill in his movies, whether it be The Crow, whether it be Pennywise, whether it be Boy Kills World, I really like him. In fact, love him as a character actor. I think he's great at it. I liked him as Nosferatu. I thought it was awesome. I am disappointed in the visual style. And again, that isn't that I hated it. It's because here's the thing, not only because it's my brethren, but also being a vampire historian, I understand the mustache, the hair. I'll put that out on Front Street right now. Because that's the biggest issue that Mrs. Vamp had with the movie. She hated it so much. Um, being that I know the history of Nosferatu coming off of Bram Stoker's, the ties to Vlad the Impaler, as well as the fact that Bram Stoker is also based off Carmella. Like, I understand all of that. I'm watching this movie understanding why they made these decisions. The reason I personally would have preferred that he didn't have what I kind of call the Nazi hair, and why I prefer that he did not have the mustache, despite the fact I understood it, is simply due to the fact that if you look at the overall history of Nosferatu specifically in film and television, as as opposed to like the aristocratic English style vampires or very posh vampires or punk vampires or cannibalistic vampires. Nosferatu is the only one who has, up until now, always had the same look. Tweaks here and there. But when you look at, you know, when you look at the original Nosferatu of 1922, Klaus's version of it in 1979, Willem Dafoe with Shadow of a Vampire, even to Are You Afraid of the Dark when they had Nosferatu featured on there. Nosferatu has always stylistically been exactly the same. And of course, Salem's Lot, which we discussed on last year's best of season. With little tweaks, of course, which are stylistic distances. The bald head, the pointed ears, the rat fangs, and the long fingers with the nails always have been a thing when it comes to Nosferatu. So, being that Nosferatu was the only vampire who, over 100+ years of coverage, has always looked a certain way, that's the only real reason why I would have liked them to have kept it that way. Um, but other than that, I enjoyed the movie. I am also a really big, even though he's only got like four main Hollywood movies. I mean, dude, I'm a Robert Eggers fan. His style is everything I love in movies. Dark, creepy, you know, kind of, for lack of a better term, not to sound like overly like stereotypically, but gothy. I love his style. From The Witch, which we discussed on a previous episode, to The Northman, which you and I saw together, to Lighthouse, which I've seen and have a copy of, and then right up to Nosferatu. Dude, he is just up my alley as a stylistic director that I really love. And he's since announced that his next movie is going to be Werewolf, which I think I'm already in it to win it. So anyway, visually, yes, I would have liked those to have been left out. But as far as Bill's performance as Nosferatu and the stylistic vision that Robert has, I still find the movie personally an 8 out of 10. While something I know you're going to get into, I definitely do agree with because it hits differently a year later than it did a year ago.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the one thing that I'm kind of questioning about whether why they did it and what they, with Eggers, why he decided to go that way. Because they did, like a lot of people that know the promos that they were showing before the movie showed Skarsgård in full normal
Traditional,
Nosferatu traditional view, and I think it was
100%.
kind of like wondering, like, I wonder if he just was like, you know what? That's what everybody does. And I don't want to be like everybody. So nobody's ever challenged the way that, Nosferatu should look. Other than, like you said, other than little tweaks, it's always been that traditional look. And he says, like, maybe I'll just go against the grain and see, and whether or not it's a choice that, that he should have made, or a choice that he didn't make. Obviously in the long run, it's done. The movie's already out, and there's no take backs as far as that. So I'm like, to me, I get it. Like I said, I wasn't too mad about it. Like I said, it's just because, like I said, the when you're so used to the look, and then you see that mustache, it's just very comical to a
Yeah.
point where it's not meant to be comical, but just because it's like, like our buddy that I can't remember his name now. Our art guy that we've gotten the Nosferatu stuff where he's got the,
JM.
yeah, but he's got the one art that I liked that was Nosferatu with the fake mustache on a stick, and to that, to a point where that's where it kind of, like I said, I don't think nobody meant it to be comical, but it,
Yeah.
it just was comical. And there's other things, very, his very Skeksis sort of Dark Crystal like body that you
Yeah.
see towards the end, a little bit of Skarsgård, Nosferatu Wang Chung that you see a little bit in the movie and stuff like that. but then again, like I said, maybe like I always applaud everybody for you want people to do things a certain way, but then you're like, oh, I'm tired of Hollywood always doing this and doing that, and then somebody does something different, and you're like, why the hell did he do something different? And I'm like, well, you want him to do something different, then somebody does something different, and then now you don't want it to be different. So it's kind of like one
Right.
of those ones. But I love the fact that even going into this film, going back and rewatching it again, just made me love Skarsgård even more. I heard that like he like went to like some kind of like Alaskan monks or some kind of things to learn to get his voice to drop super super low. So his voice in the movie is straight up him. I mean, they probably threw a little bit of extra, reverb or something on that, but that's actually him, being able to lower his voice to it, to get a really low, like very like monkish kind of like low tone. But yeah, I thought it was cool. And like I said, I mean, when we went and seen this movie, like I said, I liked it. Like I said, the the shock of seeing him was more of like a shock thing, especially because like I said, we saw that promo of him
Yeah.
normal. Then all of a sudden we're like, wait, when did he get a mustache and some hair and some
And
Hitler
it's
hair?
funny, Devil, real quick, not to beat a dead horse on the Crow thing, but it was the similar thing with Crow. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it's another Skarsgård thing, because all those
Yeah.
early promo photos had come out with him, this long curly mullet that people were freaking out about. But then in the movie, he's just got a normal hairstyle for the entire movie. So I started wondering when we watched it if over the course of the movie his hair was going to grow. Nope, it stayed exactly the same. So it is just a little interesting that the promo photos of two Skarsgård movies changed when it came to the final product.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, overall, like I said, like I said, I've always liked Nosferatu. I wouldn't put like to me, it was never my favorite of all of them. My favorite has always been the Bela Lugosi's
Yep.
Dracula, as far as that, and then obviously, we've talked about it before with Lost Boys, and and Near Dark as being one of my ones. And then I always like to throw it in because I just saw a little bit of it the other day, but throwing in like a once bitten once in a while, just because you got to have a
Dude,
little comedy in your vampire.
that movie's so fun.
But anyway, like I said, I've always liked the Nosferatu story. I've always enjoyed. Like I said, to me, my favorite version of Nosferatu all the time, and I know it probably is sacrilegious to say it is, but I actually like Shadow of the Vampire. I think that is the best Nosferatu movie, even though technically it's not a Nosferatu movie because it's about the making of the Nosferatu movie.
A
But I still,
documentary
it's
in a
like a
movie.
yeah, documentary movie about a movie that got. I love the fact. I've always loved that version of it. Then again, I'm a huge William Dafoe fan, so.
Same.
But to me, but like I said, I enjoyed this, and like I said, when we were talking about it before, it's like I enjoyed it, and then watching it again the second time, I still enjoyed it, but there were just certain things that I enjoyed more the first time, and then things that I enjoyed better this time. And like I said, I remember it being a longer movie, but for some reason, this time watching it, it just seemed like it was dragging a lot more on this version of this time of watching it. And this would have been watching it for our discussion, it would have been my third time seeing the film.
Yep.
So I had
Same.
watched it I had watched it from the theater, then watched it one more time, and then obviously rewatched it again, for our discussion. And like I said, the even the second time it didn't feel as long as the third time. And then the main discourse, which we'll talk about right now, is both of us sort of on that agreement that, not to say that we don't think that she's a good actress, because we're not saying that, but we're talking about how it's been known, we've talked about it before on the show and off the air and stuff like that, that we were kind of a little bit harsh on Lily Rose Depp's portrayal in this film. And I kind of felt like that in the first time I watched it, maybe a little bit in the second time, but now that the third time I watched it, I actually enjoyed her performance more this time. I think I kind of just watched her and just watched her mannerisms and like that, and then kind of just took in the place of that role with other actresses that had done that role before too. And it's very, like I said, I don't think that she didn't act just as good as some of those. It is a very kind of annoying, character, to a certain point, you know what I mean? Because she's just like, oh, I keep dreaming of this guy, the whole entire time, like, oh no, but I love this guy, you know what I mean? So when you get to it, but like I said, I mean, this time watching it, I actually, like I said, I enjoyed her performance a little bit more in this. I mean, I'm not gonna go as far as saying that, I think she's an Oscar winning, actress and stuff like that in this performance. I mean, like I said, I like her. I mean, her and Harley Quinn Smith and freaking Yoga Hosers is amazing. I love her in
Yoga
Yoga
hosers.
Hosers, but that's more of like
Yes.
that stupid, kind of like, okay, I'm acting like a teenager. Where this one, it was more of a period piece. She had to
Mhm.
kind of act like a certain type period, and it's just that, like you said, I mean, I agreed to begin with where I thought the role might have been a little too big for her, but then watching it again, even though I still somewhat agree with it, I think her performance was better the third time I watched it versus the first time.
No, absolutely. Because and that was the thing. I've been very open and honest about this. In fact, and again, Devil, you're completely right. And in retrospect, I owe Lily a little apology, and also I kind of owe a fist bump to Adam Caesar because he was on the Lily Rose Depp bandwagon. When for all of you fans in Infernos, if you remember watching our panel with Adam, he protected her. And again, I didn't bash her. I stand by my opinion then. I stand by my opinion now. I still feel, not even felt, but do feel that that's a very difficult role for a new actress to tackle. I still feel that way, but there were a lot of subtle nuances that, yes, I didn't pick up on then. And even then, that third time around, I did notice that really did make me appreciate her performance more. I always said that if I was casting that movie, I always appreciated the understanding of using a young actress at the time in that movie where they're trying to very much stick to the tradition of a period piece. Where, look, I'm not trying to sound like a sleazy old man, but the fact of the matter is, for anybody who understands or understood old school vampires and the idea that their love interests were always very young. You got to remember, these books, these stories were all written, 50, 100, 200 years ago. Things were different. The way things were written were different. So the idea of vampires, these multi-hundred-year creatures, always going after young love interests, it was simply the way. It wasn't meant to be bizarre. It wasn't meant to be sleazy. It's just simply the way these things were written. So not only understanding that a young actress to portray this young character being pursued by an older gentleman, for lack of a better term, mixed with having the words Depp on your poster is not a bad thing either. It does make it understandably appropriate. I always said that I would have personally liked them to cast somebody like Emma Stone. And it isn't, and the fact of the matter is she's a multi-time Oscar winner. That is not why I always said that. It has nothing to do with the Oscars, but it does have to do with, ironically, the movies that she's recently won the Oscars for are period pieces. Marie Antoinette, stuff like that. So Emma simply already having experience in movies based off of those times was the reason why she was always a very quick casting decision that hit my brain if I was in charge of it. But just like Devil said, the rewatching it, paying a little bit more attention, being a little less judgy, made sense that it actually was quite a solid performance. Do I think it could have been a little better? Sure. Because again, that's an incredibly difficult, that's a hard casting. I don't mean the actress. I just mean a hard role. That's a very difficult role because, especially with it being this kind of combination of early romance mixed with, to a certain degree, Linda Blair style exorcist possession. Is that just makes it incredibly challenging. But hindsight being 2020 and giving it a year later option, like watch, definitely brought things to light where I do appreciate Lily's performance a lot more now than I did. Because like we said, Devil and I saw it a year ago in the theaters, and as soon as that thing hit digital streaming and also DVD, I scooped it up for my collection right away and watched it very quickly. I still stand by the score that I always gave this movie, where if we were to discuss this in a proper showdown, I might have to tweak things properly. But overall, for my genuine enjoyment, I still consider it very high up. Me and Mrs. Vamp still talk about it, and she's just like, babe, that movie is barely a six. But again, Robert's work is stylistically much more my style than it is Mrs. Vamp's. And again, with her liking Nosferatu, but disliking the visual look of Nosferatu in this movie, does play a much heavier role in her judging and scoring of that movie than it came for mine. But Devil, I definitely do agree with you, man, when it comes to the idea that Robert was like, but everybody does do that. Let me try this, see how I like it, because I can always fix it. That would definitely be a very, very cool question and concept to talk to Robert about, should you and I hopefully have the opportunity to talk with him. Because, dude, that would be very cool conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I said, into when it gets down to the to the end of the movie, I love the I thought the original Nosferatu and them trapping him and then all of a sudden the light and stuff like that. Where in this one, I almost kind of felt like he just didn't really give a fuck. He was just like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
eat you. There's a big ass window there. I can see the sun coming all the time, but I'm like, yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna keep on eating her and stuff like that. But I did like like I said earlier, the dark crystal kind of sketchy look of him and kind of
Mhm.
deteriorating into her as he's dying and stuff like that. And I thought that was a pretty cool like visual ending and stuff like that to me. I like it, you know what I mean? I thought it was cool. Yeah, I mean, I still, like I said, I still love the ending from Shadow of Vampire, the trapping and the horrors and everything coming down and kind of trapping them inside. But yeah, yeah, I thought, like I said, after watching it again, you know what I mean, there were definitely things that I didn't find enjoyable, a lot more enjoyable, that the watching it a couple more times. So yeah, it's definitely, like I said, my only thing was, like I said earlier, was it seemed like it dragged on a little bit more, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just one of those,
Yeah.
like, obviously, because it's a period piece. It's got to have a lot of, like, mood setting and doing all this kind of stuff, and it's all it's got a story to tell, and all that kind of stuff. That it felt like the first time, a couple times watching it, didn't seem as long, but maybe because now I kind of know where everything is. It just seems like it's taking longer to get to A to B to C to D. Or before, I didn't know where C was or D was or E was yet. So it kind of kept you into it. But yeah, overall, like I said, I still, think it's, one of the best movies that came out. I mean, I know we're discussing it in 2025, but it was one of the better films that came out in 2024. And I'm interested in seeing what Egger's gonna do. I'm interested in seeing the new they've been showing the new trailer for the new Dracula movie that's coming out soon. So be cool to that. That'd be cool to see, like I said, the news where he's gonna do a werewolf movie. So I think that'd be interesting. Hopefully hopefully he doesn't do a completely change of like a werewolf versus like the mustache and,
Right.
and the werewolf is wearing like assless chaps or something like that, or
There's a small part of me that's like almost prepared for that, but yeah,
like
Devil, I
wolf cop,
am damn
like some kind of
sure
wolf cop shit.
I'm damn sure not rooting for that.
Yeah,
No, absolutely there, my friend. Let's move into our next movie as chosen by the Fangs and Infernos, and let's get a little comical. Let's get a little bit B-rate horror, man. Let's talk about, Uncle Lloyd, and we've got Toxic Avenger. This was an interesting thing because this movie had been something that you and I had been hearing about forever. when it came to the casting, when it came to the style. Lloyd Kaufman was absolutely involved in this movie, 100% he was. It just wasn't technically a Trauma movie. It just wasn't technically a Lloyd Kaufman movie, but he was consulted, he was a producer. He definitely had his finger on the pulse when it came to this movie because if you for any of you Fangs and Infernos or that are interested in Trauma, if you're not already fans, if you go to the Trauma socials, you'll see that this movie was always promoted. So it's not like this movie was something that somebody else convinced Lloyd to give the rights to, and they went out and did their own thing. This was always signed off on. This was always supported by Trauma, which was super duper awesome. It was a very, very interesting movie. I remember when you showed me the trailer on this because I don't do trailers, and I was always very like a little uneasy about wanting to watch this, and I was a little bit judgy when it came to the casting. It has nothing to do with Elijah Wood, who I think is great. It has nothing to do with Kevin Bacon, who I think is great. It has nothing to do with Peter Dinklage, who I think is great. However, I'm very loyal to the Toxic Avenger and always have been, and I've always stood by and loved the fact that the franchise was always based around this less than average sized person turned into this monster of like superhuman strength and stuff as now this like your friendly neighborhood toxic, we love the toxic monster, you know, and all of a sudden they're flipping the script where the Toxic Avenger is now being portrayed by a little person. And while he still has the superhuman powers, the strength, he's still of small stature. And don't get me wrong, Fangs and Infernos, I'm not judging this in any way when it comes to the community. I'm simply acknowledging the fact that you have a character who has four feature-length movies and a cartoon television series that have always portrayed the character a certain way. Kind of like what I said about Nosferatu when it came to the stylistic vision. There's a long history of this. It's kind of the same concept. But look, when it came to watching the movie, I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time watching it. I thought Peter did just fine. I thought it was great. I liked Elijah's kind of creepy, almost kind of Danny DeVito, Tim Burton's Penguin feel to the character. And, Kevin Bacon's portrayal of just kind of that Tromaville dick. I enjoyed it. Like, I would watch the movie again. I have watched the movie since because I watched it when it came out on DVD and I watched it in preparation. I'm gonna watch it more. I like it just fine. It's a good time. I I think you're going to get into this a little more in detail. There are parts of the movie that I do question if they're going to age well, but overall, I don't personally have anything bad overall to say about the movie. I thought it was a good time. It was definitely different from what I'm used to, but I really can't say that when the credits hit, I was mad because I wasn't.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing about the when I found out that years, I mean, we've been waiting for this movie to come out. It was through they showed like a showing of it at like Sundance or Cannes or something like that, but nobody would pick it up. So we were like, oh shit, man, like are we ever gonna be able to see this? And then eventually, we got the light. We're like, oh hell yeah, man, it's gonna be in theaters and it's gonna come out. I'm like, hell yeah, and I'm like, oh cool. But like when I first heard about it, I'm like, Peter Dinklage. I mean, like I said, I love Peter Dinklage. I'm a Peter
Same.
Dinklage fan. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I mean, Melvin in the original one is skinny, nerdy guy. Okay, maybe you make him like a short person, and and he goes and like okay, and then I'm like, okay, so when he turns into Toxic Avenger, does he become this big, huge
Right.
monster? And then all of a sudden you see that it's still, it's not Peter Dinklage playing the part because I read something about he was talking about where I think it was like another actor, but I think it was actually a female that played him that did the all the makeup and all and things like that. But yeah, I was like,
I had heard that Peter's got a little bit of claustrophobia when it comes to heavy prosthetics.
yeah, yeah. So I'm like, but I'm like, okay. So I wonder if that was like to me. I'm kind of wondering if it's a conscious thing where there was two routes to go. The more comical route where obviously you have Peter Dinklage's size, and then he turns into Tox Avenger, and now he's like an 8'5" guy or something like that, which would be kind of funny. But then it's like, are you are you you know poking fun of the community or something like that, where at least if you make it a short short person, and then Toxic Avenger turns into a short person too. So it's kind of, I was always kind of like, it's a question, the wondering about that. But yeah, I mean, I think Peter Dinklage's character and him as Toxic is great. I think he's funny in this movie. I love the nods to the original where they're in like what's it, the Saint Toma
Saint
or
Saint Roma.
Saint Roma, but the S,
That was
yeah,
so clever.
but it's like, but like half of the words are kind of veered off, so it looks like it says Tromaville still. So it was like, that was kind of cool. I love the fact that that's obviously the Toxic Avenger. Obviously you got to have the toxic waste. I do like I do like the newer. I mean, as far as like liking older stuff versus the newer stuff, I did kind of like the mop in this version. I thought that was pretty cool, where the mop is like a weapon that has like supernatural like
Yeah.
tendencies with the toxic. I
Good.
thought
It
that
was
was,
kind of like He-Man's sword.
yeah, I thought that was kind of cool and stuff like that. Like, and that, like you said, I think Kevin Bacon's character in this movie is, yeah, he's your typical, trauma guy, trauma dick throughout this movie. And then, like you said, I nailed it on the spot. I think Elijah Wood is like basically like a mixture between Riff Raff and the Penguin, Danny DeVito's Penguin, definitely. But I thought it was just crazy. I like it where it was like, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying this is a mainstream movie, but as far as trauma, it's a little bit more Hollywood version of it versus like the trauma films.
Yeah.
But I do love the fact that, yeah, they still just went straight up campy, and it's super super brutal. It's super violent. Yes, it's a little bit more CGI-ish than the original one, obviously, because they didn't have CGI in the 80s, so you basically just had to like smash a pumpkin that had a face drawing on it that looked like it was the guy's face or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, you go very cheesy and stuff like that. Where in this one, it's a little bit more graphic, but I love it. I love the stupid, characters that you bring in. You have like the rap group that's bringing there, and you have the guy that comes out with the big mohawk that's going after him. He's very Class of Nukem,
Yeah.
very very trauma like, and then you have the one guy that's like rapping the whole time, like, yeah, yeah. And then my favorite character is the parkour ninja that just
Yes.
jumping all the time, and he's like, nailed it, yeah. I just it's just like some random freaking just he's like just flipping around and jumping everywhere, and you're like, he's like, I'm gonna use these moves. Like the guy's like, come on, man, no more parkour today.
It's like, stop me. But no, it's great. There's so much CGI to it. I mean, I love the de-jawing kill. It was just so awesome. I'm just like, yeah, because I remember like, that was actually one of the things that calmed me down a little bit when it came to the trailer, because I like I said, most trailers I stopped watching them because they give too much away. It fucks up my experience. I might still watch a movie and just it might not be my jam, but I don't want to watch a movie that turns out to not be my jam, but then also realize that all the good things, whether there's a lot of good things or a little bit of good things, were spoiled. So like, trailers to me are, obviously they're just a lot of the times I feel like they're just spoilers. So I don't really do the trailers all that much. But watching the de-jawing on the trailer definitely got me a little jazzy, where I was like, okay, well, if they're gonna go that route when it comes to kills, I think I can get behind that. But yeah, ultimately, when it comes to the Toxic Avenger, it's a really good time. It's super enjoyable. Again, the style of movie, it's not going to be for everybody. I wouldn't give it the highest score. I wouldn't give it like a me personal Nosferatu score, but it would be a score of quality. It'd be a score of understanding, because it is a movie I'm still going to watch on some type of regularity. Not necessarily a traditional regularity, but I'm damn sure going to have plenty of times where I'm scrolling through the movies and being like, Yeah, you know what? That would be fun. Or I might just be thinking to myself, man, why am I just in the mood for Toxic Avenger? So I'm going to go get it. So it's definitely a movie that I know that I'm going to watch on the regularity in some way, and it's a good time. And now, when it comes to this one, Devil Man, this is all you to kick this one off, man, because you were instantaneously all over this one where you were like, Vamp, I am taking this movie from my list right now. And dude, kudos to you. Of course, an amazing choice by you. We love the director. We've covered him before with previous movies, but it's probably the newest of all of the movies. In fact, it is the newest of the movies that we put up for voting. And the Fangs and Infernos were all over it there, my friend. Talk to us, man. Let's talk Frankenstein.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, precursoring it last year, we did the when we did the best of 2024. You know, obviously we picked five vampires movies and five of mine. So there was 10 choices, and then out of the five, Vampire won four, and I won one. And lo and behold, 2025 is just like 2024, where I had a couple of ones that were kind of smidgen in the smidge, and then the last second came back in. But my one movie, I will say at least that, I mean, as far as we're going already, and I know it's going to be a tough sell because Vampire loves this Nosferatu and like that. I honestly will put Frankenstein down as probably the best movie to come out of 2025, doubt, bar none. And like I said, I'm gonna say right here, and you know, as much as people know about us, we've done a Universal Monsters, you know, episode where we're both huge fans of the Universal Monsters and the Universal realm. I will die on a hill saying that this is the best version of any Frankenstein movie I've ever seen. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, like I said, I understand that's an opinion, and some people are going to be like, "Oh no, devil, that's just wrong." I'm like, "Hey, man, you're allowed to have your opinion, even though you're wrong." But anyway, you're allowed to have your opinion. And like I said, I mean, yeah, there are things that. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying this is a perfect movie. It's not a perfect movie. I mean, there are parts of it that could have been a little bit better. I wish it would have had a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that and stuff like that. But like I said, I've been a huge Del Toro fan my whole life. I've always loved all of his movies. I love that his movies are very visual, but very character driven and very story driven.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what I love about this one. And you know, we've talked about this a little bit on off air, and I'm just going to mention it now too because a lot of people don't realize that like when it comes to the Frankenstein story, when this book was wrote, you know, in you know 1800 or whatever hell year it was or what year this was wrote, you know, when Mary Shelley first originally wrote this, it came out and people loved it, but were kind of questioning the moral of the story. And so very shortly, which is very uncommon at this time of period of time in the world, there she made a revised version of it, and the revised version of Frankenstein's is the one that most people uh are more well known for, especially when it comes to like the you know the Mary Shelley one with Robert De Niro, the Universal ones where it's more science, you know, versus nature. You know what I mean? It's that, you know, the story of don't play God. You know, obviously Frankenstein is trying to create this gun. He's trying to, you know, bring a, an inanimate object to life, trying to play God. And I'm not saying that, you know, in this version you don't have that, you know, obviously there is that science level of this, and there it is. But to me, and the one thing that I loved about this is it's very the book, the original book. It's very much a father and son. It's definitely
Yeah.
more of an emotional bond between, you know, a creator and and its creation, or you know, a mother and a child, a father and a son. You know what I mean? Somebody that creates something, whether or not you created it naturally as like in the womb, and you know you gave it birth, you gave it life, or you created it in in science as far as like making this or just creating anything, whether it be a robot or you just create something. It's that bond that you have for that. And that's what I loved about this film because it definitely still plays into that science. You shouldn't play God, but it also has that morality of like, hey, when you create something, yeah, it may not be exactly what you want, but you should still enjoy what you did and what you had, and that's what I always loved about this. And like I said, when it came to this movie, I thought it was really cool. I mean, it's a longer film, but it's a lot of story you have to get into. Obviously, you have Frankenstein's version, and then you go into the monsters version, and I mean that's the thing I love about it. I mean, my one of my favorite parts of the book and even the original movie and even the Universal movie is the going and seeing the old guy in the house and him, learning from him and him not understanding that he's not a monster and that he can be loved. And I love that. I love the version of this in the film. I thought it was really, really cool where he was kind of hiding in the shadows and helping out this family, and they think that he's like this Norse god or something like that. So they think that it might be this. And then obviously the guy's blind and he's like, hey, come in, break bread with me. I don't have much, but we can share whatever food I got. We can share whatever drink we have, a company. We can redo each other. And he starts, for the first time in Frankenstein's life, he feels like somebody can love and he's getting that feeling of having family or somebody who cares about him. And then, obviously, the wolves come and fuck them up, and Frankenstein goes and fucks the monster goes and freaking fucks up the wolf. I love that. I love that scene. I mean, that scene in the movie, man, he's just like rips the one in half. He like tears the freaking skin off the one. I mean, it's brutally crazy. But then, like I said, you come in, you see, the family comes in and sees the monster that they saw earlier and see that their father's dead and automatically go after him. And it gets to that point again where like, in a world that we live in, visually people who don't look as good as some other people can scare you. And that's the story that's still there, even though, like I said, even though Frankenstein, the monster didn't cause any harm and he actually was trying to protect the old man. He just didn't get there in time enough to help him survive, which is crazy because you see all the wolves that are dead. That you think the family would be like, okay, maybe the wolves did it, but hot-headedness, they go after him and try to kill him. But yeah, I just think that I think when it comes to that part and with the visual of how he looks. A lot of people didn't particularly like that. I thought he looked cool. I thought the
I thought he
cadaver
looked
look,
cool.
yeah, I thought the cadaver look was really, really cool. I love the fact that like, when you see him after he blows himself up to prove that he takes the dynamite and blows himself up to prove that he can still survive it. He's got, he's bone and ashes and burningness, and he's got fire, and his eyes are more fiery red. I love how he kind of adapts to that, even when he's in the water and he's freezing. His body adapts to that kind of stuff. I think the look of him was amazing. I think the actor that they got was perfect. I think the visuals were perfect. Like I said, to me, I mean, other than like I said, I mean, what else is not to love? You got Mia Goth in this whole entire movie. You got Christopher Waltz's character is amazing in this film. Yeah, like I said, it's just crazy how when this movie was gonna come out, I was like, okay, cool. I'm looking forward to like I said, I like Del Toro's films. I'm looking to
Yeah.
Frankenstein, but I was gonna be, I was never really expecting it to be you know, I mean, all honesty, I may even, I mean, I don't even know if I should say it. I may even put this as probably my favorite Del Toro film ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, between that and maybe Pan's Labyrinth is kind of in that same ballpark. But yeah, I mean,
They
it's
could fight. They could fight it out, definitely.
yeah. So to me, it's but to begin with, I was like, okay, it's gonna be good. I see it being as good as some of the other films he's done. I'm a Hellboy fan. I'm a Shape of Water fan. I love a lot of his films that he does. So I mean, I wasn't I was going into it thinking it's gonna be a good film, but it definitely was a way better than exceeded way past my expectations of what Del Toro, to the point that I think that Del Toro and this new world of Universal monsters should just belong to Del Toro, at least for a second movie. Let him get one more, see if the magic is still there. If he
Eh,
does, he should
technically, it
own
would be
Universal.
three, Devil.
Yeah.
Technically, it'd be three, Devil, because Shape of Water is the closest thing we've had to a creature from the Black Lagoon.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I mean, so it's like, maybe maybe this is his world, man. They're in that world of talking about, obviously they came out with the werewolf movie, the I almost said werewolf movie, not the werewolf movie,
Invisible Man.
the Invisible Man movie that came out, and then all that kind of, this new legends of bringing back the Universal monsters
Maybe let
kind of stuff.
Guillermo tackle the mummy.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it is. But yeah, go ahead and say what, talk about how you felt about with the Frankenstein film.
No, for sure. Like, no, I'm definitely with you. I love the fact that Mia tackled two characters in this movie, like the same character, but two different styles of the story. It's two different directions of the story. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we've talked extensively about Mia, especially with the X trilogy, and she's just fantastic regardless. No, I loved this movie because I also loved the idea of the whole father son, the true father and son thing. Because even that early scene where, kind of like when you teach your kid, like, not to touch something that's hot, and then it's kind of like, what did you learn? They basically did that in this movie. Like, when he told Frankenstein's monster not to hold this a certain way, and it broke and cut up his hand, and he's bleeding all over the place. And you can see Victor basically trying to say, I told you not to do this. Like, you were warned. What did you learn? So I loved that whole kind of like aspect to it. I love the idea, like you talked about. I loved the wolf scene. It kind of gave me that Beauty and the Beast vibes to it, of like being outnumbered, but still like the kind of stuff you would do for love or people not understanding your power. Because when you go back to the cartoon Beauty and the Beast, I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. He took his wounds, he took his beatings and his cuts and had to get kind of like nursed up a little bit. But the Beast fucked those wolves up when he was saving Belle and stuff like that. But I love the style of that. I liked the opening scene a lot, where I loved the idea of like the shipmen trying to get there, like knowing they had to free their ship because they knew where they were going, but trying to free their ship, and then having this like character coming out and they're trying to shoot him down and it's not working, and he's just going scorched earth all over these characters. He's like he did this one thing in that opening scene where he like punched this guy and he like folded up backwards like a lawn chair.
Yeah.
And but
It
it
just
wasn't
stayed there too.
yeah, but it wasn't in like a goofy campy way. It was just this slow back arch and stayed there and then just kind of folded over type look. And then just other classic scenes where you just see him fucking chucking guys that are just slamming into walls, and when you just know they're dead, you're just like, damn, he broke this one dude's arm where you saw it turn into like a nunchuck or like a slinky, because that thing went like down and backwards, like a fucking pinwheel. It was just weird. Um, but no, I love that. And it's funny because you and I were at the Netflix house not that long ago. And after watching this movie, because I hadn't seen it yet at the time, I definitely was watching this movie having a little bit of buyer's remorse, because I was like, damn it, there were fucking Frankenstein t-shirts like right there at the Netflix house, just asking for me to buy them because I knew I was going to like the movie. Because again, I like Guillermo's work. I love that stylistically, like just, futuristic, but meets like very fantasy driven style. Of course, you and I are big Doug Jones people, and Doug was in like Labyrinth and stuff like that, as well as Shape of Water. So, like, I love his style and his take on movies. But again, that's what the internet's for. I'm sure if I look up Netflix House, I'm sure there's a merch thing right there. But I couldn't help but have a little chuckle to myself as I'm watching this movie, going like, damn, that's giving me a little bit of hit of buyer's remorse, because I could be wearing my cool new t-shirt right now while I'm watching this movie. But I really did like the idea of the movie. I love the style of it, also with the whole wanting to be loved but mixed with misunderstanding. Because one of my favorite movies of the original Universal Monsters Frankenstein movie is the scene with the little girl where
Yeah.
he's just trying to play with her. He's not trying to hurt her. He's not trying to do anything. It's just kind of like what you do with your own kids or what you do with your friends, and a one, and a two, and a three, and chucks her into the water, just trying to be a lovable character. How's he supposed to know that she can't swim? And just the sadness behind this, like, fuck, she drowns. Like, even back in the 30s, like, that is a tough thing to put in a movie. Even though you don't like see it, you basically see it. But I love the fact that there's traditional aspects of the early Frankenstein movies. Again, just like you said, I love the way they made the Frankenstein monsters look. I like the fact there was more of a cadaverous human aspect, where, no disrespect to the earlier stuff, because of course we love Boris Karloff. We love our Fred Gwynn and the Munsters. But, having that more traditional, for lack of a better term, campy look, I actually was always, while I know that the movie is not the most fondly looked on movie, but the way they tackled things like Frankenstein and things like Van Helsing, and what I like the idea of different aspects, just like we said with Nosferatu, the idea of like a different person's vision of the character, humanizing them a little bit more, since that was technically more of the purpose of the playing God, was trying to make a human. Even to a certain degree, Frankenhooker had a little bit more of that human aspect to the Frankenstein character than Frankenstein did, where again, it was more that campy monster. But then as the years go by, people really tried to more humanize things. But no, I'm definitely with you on that. And you definitely have an argument and a right too, man. You definitely, if we had the opportunity, it just wasn't the way that the season ended up working, also mixed with the where Nosferatu came out versus when Frankenstein came out. You have an incredibly valid argument that there is a very good chance that if we were to do a follow-up Universal Monsters and modernize it, where we did Frankenstein versus like Nosferatu, understanding that Nosferatu is not a Universal monster version of Dracula technically, but stylistically, I think that would have been a very, very good showdown of a lot of back and forth on it. I definitely can't argue against the possibility that a very strong 8.5 to 8 victory for Frankenstein, no guarantees it would have been there, but at the same time, no guarantees that it wouldn't, because this movie is so strong with such a unique, like, detail driven story behind it, that there is just so much strength to this movie. And I'm definitely with you. I would have to watch a series of Guillermo movies. I don't have to watch them all, but I would definitely have to like pull out maybe 4 to 5, but well, besides Frankenstein, 3 to 4 other Gil Tormo movies. Watch them. There's a good chance that I might be with you, where I'll be like, yeah, it might be my number one. If not, it's my number 1A or two in the Guillermo del Toro world. I really think he killed it. I thought Mia was fantastic, and I thought the overall casting was just fucking bulletproof, dude.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'm like, and my favorite two parts too of the movie that I always found really great, with the one with me about Mia, where she's her character is so crazy, and like it's the fact that she's in love. At one point she's in love with Victor Frankenstein's brother. Then she's sort of infatuated with Victor for a while, even though Victor is definitely more infatuated with her
Yeah,
than she is of him, but she's still playing around with him. You know that she's, slinging that coochie, over that towards him,
dance
batting those
puppets
eyes and,
dance.
playing around with him. And then ultimately flirting and doing her way towards the monster, and even to the point to whenever she gets killed, he takes it with her, and brings her in and stuff like that. And she basically said that like she's been waiting her whole life for someone like him. So I'm just like, damn girl, man, how many guys' lives are you gonna ruin? Because like theoretically the brother dies, Victor dies, and the monster dies, and she dies. So she basically killed like
Yep,
3 people, all with the power of her vagina.
yep, pretty
And
much.
and then and then my other part of the fight that I thought was really funny was, yeah, when Victor's getting mad at Frankenstein, at the monster, and he's just like, I'm gonna burn this whole place down unless you say something other than Victor. And he's like, do anything, you could say anything. And he says freaking, Mia's character's name. And I think that was like the funniest, best part of the movie, just because it was like, of all the damn things you're gonna say her name with how much of, how much infatuated that he is with her. Like, oh, no, you're not getting anywhere near that. Oh, you like her now? Now I definitely got to destroy you because
Yeah.
I'm already fighting her with my brother. Now I don't need to fight her for her love and affection with my creation. So I love that. And I think that's the reason why he kind of like gives him that kind of look, like out of all the things you could say, you had to say her name, and
Yeah.
which this basically brings him to that edge and stuff like that. But yeah, I like overall, like I said, I just think it was just an amazingly visual, and just like I said, Del Toro's world is always just visually stunning. Acting is always really good, and just the
Yeah.
character and the characterizations and all that. Like I said, I mean, yeah, it's insane. I was completely blown away, way more than I thought I was going to be.
Totally. Like, yeah, you could have said fire, you could have said flower, you could have said murder, but you chose that. Like for real. Like you get it, like get off, in the words of Jay, get off my Kool-Aid, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, like seriously. But no, absolutely fucking dynamite. Probably probably out of the top five voted on by the Fangs and Infernos, probably easily in the top slot for sure. Just everything about this movie is so just strong and so well designed and so just well executed. And again, no disrespect to Nosferatu on that because I still consider the score very, very strong. But there's just something about the magic that really did come through in Frankenstein that definitely has it up there for sure. So it definitely would have been an interesting showdown, but everything that Devil has said about the way this movie was executed and designed definitely gives it up there, if not the place, when it comes to, that type of discussion for sure. Now, unfortunately, we're going to plumb it down a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about Hard Eyes. Now, when it comes to Hard Eyes, here's the thing. I don't regret for a second putting this movie on my top five to be voted on by the fans. Um, I I like this movie. It's fun. I think it's really unique. Um, I thought the story behind it was good. I liked the overall acting of the movies. I thought the characters worked, and I liked the concept for the villain. But when you watch this movie overall, and when this movie overall ended, sorry to start you guys off with this Fangs and Infernos, but it's just the way that I'm gonna do things. The fact of the idea of the villains of this movie being these fucking dweebs, while the villain of this movie that you're getting accustomed to is like nothing short of like an assassin ninja, left me going like, you fucking kidding me? How? Go fuck yourself. Again, overall, the movie's enjoyable. I will get the movie somewhere down the line to add to my collection because I enjoy it. I'll watch it here and there. It'll probably get relegated to like movies I watch around Valentine's Day because that's the concept of the movie. So I don't really fancy it a regular watch for me, but I enjoyed it okay. I'll definitely watch it again, I'm sure, and it'll periodically make its way into what I'm watching. But I love the look of the villain. In fact, I didn't actually realize this until I saw it on the notes how the mask of Hard Eyes ties in with all these other, movies that I really enjoy. So with the idea of like, mask making and visualness and special and practical and special effects, dude, I'm already just like, oh, check that box. Fuck yeah. But again, honestly, it reminds me a lot of The Invitation, which is I've always said it's 100% in my top five of best fucking vampire movies of the last decade, and I stand on that. But the last 5 minutes of The Invitation, man, that movie pissed me the fuck off. Hard Eyes is very similar to that. The end of the movie, as far as the exposure of the characters and the execution of them, left me so underwhelmed that I couldn't help but be like, wait, for real? Like, you really telling me that Hard Eyes wasn't portrayed by like Scorpio or Sub-Zero for Mortal Kombat? Oh man, you assholes.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about the Hard Eight. Like I said, I mean overall, I don't think it was a bad movie. And like I said,
No.
I mean I don't think it was horrible. I like the concept of it, the story where this guy is going around every year and whacking off like killer these couples and stuff like that and things like that. And I love the comedy aspect of this where it's like the whole entire time these two are getting chased, they're like, we're not a couple, and they're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
we
love that.
kissed, but that was not really meant to be that we're not a couple, the whole entire time. So I love that comedy aspect of it. But yeah, I mean it was just funny. I remember just the people of were talking about like this movie, and even like the Monster Mania people page talking about it a lot of times and things like
Yeah,
that, where it was like, oh, this movie is amazing and great, and I'm like, I watched it and I was like, it was okay, but in
yeah,
all honesty, I don't really get the hype as much. I think it had some cool kills. I mean,
yeah.
I'll definitely give it that. I mean, it's got the stupidity of people in it. I love that too, where like in the beginning, the girl's hiding and let me go hide in this freaking wine juicer thing. That seems like a good idea because, just in case the killer does find me, now he has an easy way to kill me because now he can just hit start on this button and squish me like I'm a freaking, like I'm a grape or some shit. I'm like, out of all the
Fucking
play,
fantastic.
yeah,
I
of all the
loved it.
play, yeah, all the places to hide. It's like, yeah, that's the, it's that commercial like where they're like, let's go hide behind all the chainsaws and knives and
Oh,
stuff, and it's
and
like,
the
yeah,
fucking killers like
yeah,
shrugging. No,
yeah.
why don't
So
we
to me,
just
it's
get it? Why don't we just get in the car?
yeah, yeah, it's just like it's like the stupid. I mean, like it's like, even in that, like even in the movie too, where it's like, they're in that van with like the hippie couple, and like they're just going to town, and I'm like, yeah, that just seems like a really bad idea. This guy's going around killing couples, and here you are, having sex, but I'm all about you go ahead and do it, but yeah, moaning and groaning like as loud as you possibly can is probably not the best idea to hide from a killer that's going around killing couples. You know what I mean? Like
At a populated drive-in.
yeah, at a drive-in and stuff like that. So it's like, it's fun. Like I do like like you said, the ending of like, oh, who did it? The thruple kind of idea, and it's like, oh, okay. And then like I said, the couple being skinny, scrawny little punk little dude and chick, and it's like, what? Where was the badasses that were like freaking being able to do all this, like you said, all this assassin ninja moves and things like that? I do like the fact that the girl gets beheaded by the sword of the
That
saint. So I
kill is
thought
the
that was
best
pretty
one
cool.
of the movie.
So I thought,
That
yeah, I thought that was cool. But like I said, overall, I thought the movie was fun. You know what I mean? It's a Valentine's Day movie. You know what I mean? I put it up there with in the realm of like My Bloody Valentine and all those.
yeah,
Even those movies were campy and stupid, but it was entertaining enough where you could watch it and be like, oh, yeah, this is fun. It's like I said, it's not a movie that I'll probably go and watch all the time. But yeah, if it's getting around Valentine's Day and I want to watch a Valentine's Day horror, because it's not like there's a million of Valentine's Day horror films. So, I'm like, I'll throw that. I mean, there probably are. I mean, there's if you want to watch really, really horrible Valentine's Day, that's the thing that I talk about with this one. As bad as people think it is, and it's a bad. There are a lot worse Valentine's Day movies. I mean, there are probably 19 million low budget Cupid horror films that are like the worst pieces of shit you'll ever see in your entire life. Like porn actors and actresses have worked better than these people who are in these movies. So it's like, yeah, so yeah, so like when it comes down to it, even though like I said, I don't specifically think this movie's that great, but like we were talking about before with when we did our Easter film and how the that movie is considered the top notch of Easter horror films. This is like legitimately and rightfully so is one of the
Like
best.
the erotica like
Yeah,
stuff.
or the rot or the rot. Even but we're talking about Rotten Tail. Rotten Tail
Rotten
is
Tail, yeah.
considered, yeah, is one of the ones
Yeah.
that are considered the better,
Right.
higher up Easter films, and
Like
it's like,
says
what
who?
really? And like I said, as much as I'm bashing and don't really care that much for those hard eye movies, I mean it is probably top three best Valentine's Day horror films that you're gonna watch. Not,
No, for
I
sure.
mean, unless you're considering like remakes and all that together, because I mean, I'm just considering My Bloody Valentine remake and original as one film right now. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because if I'm being put on the spot, it's gonna be Hard Eyes Valentine and My Bloody Valentine slash 3D. Like
yeah,
that's if I'm being put on the spot for top Valentine's Day. Because I also really like Valentine just for what it's worth, because
yeah.
I love the cast and I overall do love the story. I think it's really solid. It's just late 90s, early 2000s traditional slasher horror. So I get it. But yeah, Devil, that's just kind of the way it is. I mean, look, again, I like that movie. It's just the end of the movie when it came to the exposure of the characters was so fucking underwhelming. But the kill of the villain female was fucking awesome. I mean, I also loved the low drawn out like as her body weight is like ripping off her head. I was like that. Fuck yeah. I was like, dude, I'll give you a top tier kill on that one on a movie that is not going to be a top tier movie. So, like, I don't have any regret putting it on my list for voting. In comparison to the other movies we've talked about and are about to close out with, there do I kind of wish that it had been voted on a little bit differently? Yeah. If I'm comparing the movies, like look, for personal love, I was surprised the Fangs and Infernos voted on Toxic Avenger. But for personal love, I was stoked that we get to talk about it. That's fun for me. But when you're comparing it up against Nosferatu, damn sure Frankenstein, and even Black Phone, which is coming off such a strong initial showing, which we're getting into now, when you look at the other movies of interest in design, Ugly Stepsister, Death of a Unicorn might have been a little bit more interesting had the votes fall in a certain way. Even though there was a part of me that kind of knew Heart Eyes had a strong likelihood to end up on this list. And again, that's not me going like, fuck yeah, Fangs, thanks for looking out for your boy. That's coming off of all of the hype that even the con mother like not motherboards like storyboard voting whatever the hell they used to be called message boards, all the comments and conversations about this movie is one of the other reasons why I just kind of felt it had to be at least up for voting. Wasn't surprised that it won, but then when I watched it I was kind of like, eh, I guess. And my closing thought on this before we get into Black Phone 2 is very, very simple. I looked at this movie a lot the way I looked at The Strangers. I like The Strangers, but I was hearing so much talk about how amazing this movie was, from the scare factors to how terrifying it was to the acting and the story. I remember watching The Strangers and being like, the fuck movie were y'all watching? I didn't hate it. I didn't need it right away. I added it to my collection eventually. I added the sequel to it eventually. I added chapter one to my collection eventually and was out running errands with Mrs. Vamp today and realized that chapter two had just come out on DVD. And guess what? I will add it to my collection eventually. But I don't have a drive factor to need it right this second, just like we discussed off the air. Hard Eyes will get on my shelf. It'll be there for when I want it to be there. I don't need it right this second. It's not worth $20 to me. It's just the way it is. But that being said, I do again put it as my lower movie on our list. Now, as we close out, we get to talk about Black Phone 2. You and I watched this recently. We all got together, you, me, Mrs. Vamp, we all watched it together. This movie was cool. I love The Black Phone. I think that movie was so cool, so innovative, so stylistically, visually interesting, and I really liked the acting execution. Now, when it comes to The Black Phone 2, I still liked it. I did find it to be a drop off of the first movie by quite a bit. Um, I still, again, really like it. It'll be on my shelf. I I have a little bit more interest to add it sooner than Hard Eyes. But again, I don't feel the need to run out right this second and get it. It comes out as of the recording of this episode, it comes out next week. Um, I don't need it right this second. Here's the thing. When the movie got going, I really got into it. I really enjoyed it as it really was driving up their plans to get the drop on Ethan Hawke's character. The way that Ethan was doing the kills or the injuries, I really thought that when the engine warmed up and really got going, I liked the movie a lot. But you and I talk a lot about slow burn. We talked about it in Nosferatu. We grazed over it with the fact that Frankenstein does have a longer running time as well. I really felt that this movie was an unnecessary slow burn because my biggest problem when it came to Black Phone 2 was the fact that all of these characters were very established already. And I felt there was a lot of just slow conversations and casual references to the first movie, but I really felt that the story they told in this movie and the execution of it just dragged at a pace that was more detrimental to the movie than it needed to be. I did enjoy the movie. I thought Ethan's portrayal of the character again was very good. I like the fact they got the original actors back in the movie. I thought that was great. I was super stoked to see that. But I do think that you have to commit to this movie to get over that hump if you really want to get your money's worth.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about this movie, and I'll even precursor with that even in mentioning that I honestly probably will put this even worse than Hard Eyes because with Hard Eyes, at least there was always the hype of it, and then when you watched it, you're like, okay, it's not as that. Where this already had a predetermined hype because of how good the original Black Phone was, and then you watch it and like you said, the slow burn on this was just, to me it's like I mean, I get it. One thing that we talk about constantly on the show is that we're big huge backstory people. We
Yeah.
love hearing about backstories and love hearing about characterizations and things about them and stuff like that,
Development.
which I get when you're doing a first movie, you get that, whether it be Halloween 1, or you go to House of a Thousand Corpses, or all this kind of stuff like that. Your first movie is the one who you sets up all this storyline and backstory and characters and stuff like that, so when you get into the second movie, you already know these characters, you already know all this stuff like that. So you can kind of skip that meat and potatoes and go, okay, we already know that. And yeah, this movie has all those same actors and actresses and stuff like that. But then, instead of maybe later on in the movie, you kind of start getting into the backstory of this one. It starts off with mainly all backstory, so you got to learn a whole new story again than previously from the first movie. And even though they did go into backstory a little bit on the Black Phone, I think the way that it was done originally was very more inventive. It was definitely a lot more. Okay, you learn a little bit, show you a little bit, learn a little bit, show you a little bit. It kept you intrigued the whole entire time. Like you said, watching this movie, I don't remember the length of this movie, but let's just say it's like an hour and 45 minutes or something like that. The first hour of this movie, I was just ready to go to sleep. I was
Yeah,
like,
it
this
was
is
it was
just,
hurting me, Devil. It really
it was
was.
just like, this is boring as fuck. Yeah, I mean, and the whole entire time, it was almost comical too. While they're getting into this movie, it's like, okay, first off, he's Freddy Krueger now, so now he's going into people's
Two,
dreams.
two, 2 hours, an hour
So
54.
yeah, so almost 2 hours. So I was pretty close, about 15 minutes off. But yeah, so like yeah, first hour or so of this movie is like ugh. And then like I said, you go, you say, okay, first of all, he's Michael Myers, he's Freddy Krueger because he can get into people's dreams. And then like you saw like the snow of the guy's face and it looked like a hockey mask. I'm like, okay, now he's turning into this, and now okay, now it's turning into Carrie, or it's this, and it was just like way too many trope horror films just mixed into one. And like I said, I liked a little bit of that background story. I love the fact that it was talking about this, campground from years ago when the main kid and his sister's mom was going to, and the black phone guy was taking and killing little kids that were missing and all that kind of stuff. I do like that backstory of it. It's just that when they were explaining it, it just took way too long to explain. It was just way too drawn out. The sister, doing all that stuff that she's doing. Like I said, that it was just like, to me, it just, when Ethan Hawke was there and those characters at that times when he was going, it was cool. But like to me, the last like 15-20 minutes of the movie was, the actual fighting scene
Yeah.
between them and them getting into it, figuring all this out, figuring out the bodies of the kids and the barrels and underwater, and figuring out, okay, we can hurt him in a dream and he can hurt us, but we got to do it this way, and we can kind of bring him sort of like Freddy Krueger. I think it was like four or whatever, or the Dream Warrior one or whatever, where she can bring him out of the dreams into back into reality. So it kind
Freddy
of had
versus
that,
Jason for sure.
yeah, yeah, those kind of like realities of that kind of stuff like that. So it was like, he's, in those scenes, he's not punching anything, but he's punching where the black phone bad guy is, and he's fucking him up and stuff like that. And it's like, that was cool. I liked all that. But yeah, it was just like, from how good of a story that original was, and that just that character of him just going around with the balloon and kidnapping these kids, and like I get the supernatural ties of it because of the phone in the original one, and getting, messages from the other side. So I kind of, I get the concept of that. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it was just, to me, if I'm kind of glad that I didn't go to the theaters and watch it, because
Yeah.
it's one of those ones, like, yeah, like the whole entire time I was like half just like getting ready to fall asleep. I'm like, this something needs to happen to make my ass up.
No, for sure. Yeah, no. Ultimately, you're definitely right about that because yeah, it was definitely better that we got to watch this, from the comfort of our couch, over lunch
Yeah, and being
than
able to talk versus like in a,
yeah.
yeah, be quiet.
Yeah, so like, ultimately again, like it's one of those things that like I picked it for my list based off of, and again, this really kind of falls on me, but again, it was enjoyed enough, or at least curious enough by the Fangs and Infernos that they wanted us to discuss it. Because again, I could have picked something and have them be like, and give it 2 votes and it not make the top five because they weren't into it. That's totally fine. Like we can read the room, we get it. Um, but like that was kind of my thing is like I was so stoked on that movie, and I'm with you. I'm glad we didn't hit the theaters for that. I really wanted to because I was hype. I was like, dude, I'm in, man. That fucking movie, first movie was so great. I didn't expect the second movie to surpass it, but I didn't expect the second movie to feel like such a drop off that it almost kind of felt like the third or fourth sequel. Like, it 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 that hurt me a little bit. Again, it'll end up on the shelf. I like the franchise as a whole. I like the character of the grabber as a whole. But again, I'll get it on my own time, or I'll, ask, Mrs. Vamp or Brother Vamp or one of my family members to get it for me as a present. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
we'll keep that in mind and stuff like that. But
It went like you were saying, joking around about it dropping off. It went from supposedly being the Crow 2 to being the Crow 4.
oh God, yeah. It really was. Like it really was. And there's enough of it that of the action when it got going to maybe just keep it out of Wicked Prayer Land. But the problem is, you, like I said, you have to be in for the ride and stay awake enough during the ride to get to that cool action scene to save it from quite hitting Wicked Prayer. But it's definitely it's worthy. Unfortunately, it's worthy of those conversations because it has that feel of just a terrible, part three or part four of a franchise than it had of this anticipated sequel, of which it had, for a year and a half. So that's just kind of the way it is. But I am definite, and I'm pretty sure that they're just going to leave it at that. But I really hope that they're not going to look into a Black Phone 3 because I'm going to be turned off to it. I'm not going to play their games. And I do love the character. I do love the idea of the grabber. But again, it is also such of a bummer when you have a character that's got a pretty standalone individual character that kind of stands on its own merit. Where, yeah, even with something like the grabber, child abduction, child molestation, things like that isn't exactly something that's never been discussed before. But Black Phone's concept of Nuff was unique enough to stand on its own 2 feet, merit-wise, as its own standalone movie. I never really understood why they even bothered to do a second one because I felt the movie ending of the first one was solid enough to just be its own thing. And hindsight being 2020, I am kind of wishing that they had done that. But it's also kind of funny too because like Mrs. Vamp and I still talk to this day about Halloween Ends because the thing is you have these very bizarre, unnecessary references to stuff that's already been done. This Freddy Krueger aspect to the grabber, this weird little reference of his mask almost kind of having a hockey mask Jason reference to it, which is very bizarre. And when it came to Halloween Ends, one of the things that I was always crazy about was for the longest time, Jason was always the slasher, just when it came to total kills and just kind of being the guy. But then Michael Myers, who is the OG, whether people want to admit it or not, that is just simply factual the way it is. Michael Myers came before Leatherface. Leatherface might have been the original guy, but that was based off of Ed Gein. As far as just a traditional slasher style, you have Michael Myers, you've got Jason, you've got Freddy in that order, simply as far as getting started. But anyway, Michael in that style is kind of the OG. Jason had taken him over. Kane Hodder had a lot to do with that, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. But with the more recent trilogy of Halloween, the kills, the story, Michael had kind of cemented himself back as the guy overall. And when it came to Halloween Ends, I was always very straight up about the fact that they simply fucked it all up thanks to that movie. And one of my biggest reasons for saying that was you taking a concept in Halloween Ends of, is this kid possessed by the spirit of Michael Myers to potentially continue on as that character? Friday the 13th did that 30 years ago with like Corey Haim's character and stuff like that.
Feldman.
Sorry, yeah. Corey Feldman's character back then with that. And that was one of my biggest disappointments in that movie was you had it right there in your possession to have Michael go out, whether he died and Laurie died and he lived, or both of them died. You had it right there to just cement Michael as the guy, point blank, period. And you
Which
fucked it
sucks. Which
all up.
yeah, which sucks because they had the people who have done Halloween movies have had that done twice. So, like you said, you have this version where you think it's going to be the kid and he's going to turn into Michael Myers, and then anybody who knows about the Halloween franchise, with 4 and 5 with Jamie Lloyd, at
Jamie,
the
yep.
end with Daniel Harris, you thought when she kills the mom and puts the mask on and kills like Michael Myers, everybody assumed that part 5 was going to be her kind of transitioning into Michael Myers. They had it and they didn't run with it. And it's the
Yep.
same thing. It's like, come on, man. Like you could, it would have been so much better if you would have continued that story on like that. I was expecting it to be that kid. That this guy is gonna be the new Michael Myers, the new boogeyman of this town, because obviously Michael Myers is beaten getting old, so
Yeah,
you need somebody new to terrorize, and that would have been perfectly. And then, like I said, I mean, I don't hate the the new trilogy as much as some other people do, but yeah, there are definitely some aspects of it. I'm like, I wish they would have done a little bit better. Like that's one of them. But yeah, for sure.
totally. Yeah, as a trilogy itself, I like it just fine. In the overall big picture, I like it. It's solid. But the funny thing is, unfortunately, it's a lot like Warlock or Witchboard in, previous showdowns that unfortunately you've got the first two movies, which are so solid, and the third movie just hurts it overall. And that's just kind of a bummer. But to get off that tangent, it was just a comparison that Devil and I needed to make real quick. But yes, when it comes to Black Phone, look, it's cool. The progression and backstory of the grabber didn't go unappreciated because I really do like the character. But the execution of this movie, the slow burn, the drag, the little attempts at sparks that never really get off the ground, it just is what it is. So ultimately, I think Devils hit it right on the head there, where it probably does come in last in our overall thing. And so when it comes to a version of the obituaries, now when it comes to this Devil, you and I don't really do obituaries for the end of 2025 because it's voted on by the fans and we're, just kind of discussing these movies as we see based off what the fans wanted us to talk about. But overall, I do kind of see it overall lineup wise as Frankenstein, Nosferatu, Toxic Avenger, Hard Eyes, and Black Phone.
Yeah, I mean, normally, yeah, normally way we kind of do this is sort of like the last year when we did it, we sort of did it like the directors. We each kind of pick what our top five is, and we both go, okay, this was vampires top five of the top five in this order, and this is devils. But yeah, I think with this one, it's pretty much going to be unanimous. Like I said to begin with, it's definitely going to be Frankenstein as the number one of all these ones, Nosferatu, and then Toxic Avenger, Hard Eyes, and Black Phone too. Which I don't think to begin with it probably would have been that way before we started watching these movies. But I mean, it was definitely always going to be Frankenstein and and
Yeah,
um
Nosferatu.
and Nosferatu is one and two. Toxic is probably maybe three, but because Hard Eyes we kind of knew okay probably wasn't gonna ever be it, and Black Phone had the potential of being that number three because of
Yep.
how well we loved that first one. But with it dropping so bad, like I said to me, yeah. So it's definitely, yeah, that's yeah. I think for the 2025, this one we don't even need to discuss on. Like I said, we just did it right here. We don't even like I said, usually we discuss on which ones we want to put for each five, and we put a little, comparison of who we think is our top five and where we put. But yeah, yeah, this one was an easy top five to do. So yeah, might as well just let it out here on this episode already. So
For sure.
there's your top five. With the quotation marks under it saying "Sorry, no sinners."
But we got you.
Yeah.
And that's the way it's going to be there, Fangs and Infernos. We appreciate you guys so much as we wrap up season two. As always, we really, really appreciate you guys. You guys have been absolutely fantastic, and we really support the continued support, love that you show myself, that you show Devil with every episode that we do, whether it's showdowns, alphabets, directors, or interviews and con reviews. So this is going to be the end of our second season in 2025 for us, capping it off with 2025. And we'll also leave you with a little bit of info as you follow us on our socials, just like we did at the end of last year's. We are going to give a little post for the acknowledgement as well. But in the overall aspect for season number two, again, victory to the Devil when it comes to showdowns, as he does take me out when it comes to our overall showdowns versus showdowns and picks versus picks. I started off incredibly strong this season. I did well. I did have the aspects where I was up somewhere in the ballpark of like 5-1, 6-2, something like that. Started off very strong, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. So victory to the Devil when it comes to showdowns, and this season's numbers will get posted out shortly. And again, we really, really look forward to putting out this episode in a very, very short time, right after Christmas, to cap off this season. And we can't wait to start off season 3 with you guys. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. As always, please make sure that you're supporting our friends Mark and Lizzie with Rock and Horror Apparel. They are our official merch store. We really, really appreciate it. Shout out to our buddy Lydia Manson, who has ordered a shirt off of our website. So we're really, really stoked to see her rocking us. And there have also been plenty of other Fangs and Infernos that rock us and show interest as well. So we really appreciate you guys overall. Of course, it is chilly willy weather out there, so Brutalities is definitely a great way to warm your bones when it comes to, all the great products that they do. They're also dabbling in with a lot of people that Devil and I are quite fond of, like Wednesday 13. So make sure you're showing a lot of support to them. John Kozik with both the Baltimore Witchboard Museum and the Salem Witchboard Museum. Please make sure that you're supporting small independent museums for everything that they do. And of course, our friends at Twisted Vines with Chris and Saren and everything that they do for creepy decor. And we're going to bring it home with our man Chris with the Buffalo Bill House, of course. We love the fact that he was able to save the original house from Silence of the Lambs when it came to Buffalo Bill and turn it into an amazing place to stay and an amazing place to relax. It's a great time. Myself, Devil, Mrs. Vamp, we've all been there. Chris, we love you. We'll see you again soon. And to all of our sponsors and partners, we love you guys to death. Thank you so much for taking a chance on our small little show. And we've been so stoked and honored to build ourselves up, just like assisting with your guys' continued success. But again, Fangs Infernos, thank you guys so much. It is a wrap on season 2. This is our end of 2025 best of episode. We'll see you guys real soon in 2026 for season number 3. Horns up. Fangs out.